My son threw me into a nursing home like I was garbage. He wanted my company, my fortune, everything I built in 50 years. But here's what that greedy bastard didn't know. I owned the building he dumped me in. And I was about to teach him the most expensive lesson of his pathetic life. You ever trusted someone so much that you'd give them everything, only to have them stab you in the back? That's exactly what happened to me. And if you've ever felt betrayed by family, if you've ever wondered how far greed can push people, this story is going to hit you hard. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just about revenge, it's about justice, about standing up when everyone thinks you're down, and about proving that experience will always beat arrogance. Stay with me because the twist in this story is something you won't see coming. And hey, if you want more real stories like this one, stories that show you how life really works, hit that subscribe button right now and smash the like button. Your support helps me bring you more content like this every single week. My name is Richard. I'm 78 years old, and I built Thompson Industries from absolutely nothing. Started in my garage in 1971 with $200 and a dream. Worked 16-hour days, missed birthdays, missed anniversaries, sacrificed everything to turn that little operation into a $100 million manufacturing empire. My wife Margaret, God rest her soul, she understood. She supported me through every struggle, every setback, every victory. We had one son, David. I gave that boy everything. Private schools, college at Yale, a brand new BMW when he graduated. I thought I was setting him up for success. I thought I was being a good father. Turns out I was just raising a vulture who was waiting for me to get weak enough to feast on. When Margaret died 3 years ago, something broke inside me. The company didn't matter as much anymore. The money felt empty. I started thinking about slowing down, about enjoying whatever time I had left. David saw weakness. He saw opportunity. It started small. Little comments here and there. Dad, you're forgetting things. Dad, you seem confused. Dad, maybe you should let me handle this meeting. I brushed it off at first. Grief does strange things to your mind, and yeah, maybe I wasn't as sharp as I used to be. Maybe I did forget a name or two at company events. But David wasn't concerned about my health. He was building a case. 6 months after Margaret's funeral, David came to my house with 2 people I'd never seen before. A doctor and a lawyer. Both of them looking at me like I was already a corpse. The doctor did some basic tests, asked me questions about what year it was, who the president was, basic stuff that insulted my intelligence. Then he and David stepped outside to talk. When they came back in, David had papers in his hand and fake sympathy on his face. Dad, we need to talk about your living situation. Dr. Patterson here thinks you need more specialized care. You're not safe living alone anymore. I laughed. Actually laughed in his face. I'm 78, not brain dead. I can take care of myself just fine. But David had planned this perfectly. He had the doctor's evaluation stating I showed signs of early cognitive decline. He had the lawyer with conservatorship papers already drawn up. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer, just waiting for the right moment to strike. It's for your own good, Dad, he said, and I could see the lie in his eyes. See the greed. See the calculation. Within a week, I was sitting in a room at Sunset Hills Nursing Home with nothing but a small bag of clothes and my wedding ring. My house was being prepared for sale to cover care costs. My access to company accounts was temporarily restricted for my protection. My entire life was being boxed up and sold off while I was still breathing. David visited exactly once after dropping me off. Stood in my doorway with his expensive suit and his fake concern. Don't worry about the company, Dad. I'll take care of everything. Then he was gone, and I knew I'd never see him again unless I found a way to fight back. The other residents at Sunset Hills were nice enough. There was Frank, a retired teacher who still quoted Shakespeare. Maria, who'd been a nurse for 40 years before Alzheimer's started taking her memories. Robert, a veteran who told the same war stories every day but nobody minded because they were good stories. But I didn't belong there. My mind was sharp. My body was tired, sure, but I could still think, still plan, still strategize like I'd done my whole life in business. And as I sat in that room, watching the sun set through bars that were supposed to be for safety, I started putting pieces together. The first night at Sunset Hills, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about David's smug face, about how easily he'd thrown me away, about Margaret and how disappointed she'd be if she could see what our son had become. But somewhere around 3 in the morning, anger turned into something more useful. Clarity. I started paying attention to things. Details. The kind of details that built my company in the first place. The staff at Sunset Hills were good people, but they were overworked and underpaid. I could see it in their tired eyes, hear it in their conversations during shift changes. The building itself was decent but showing its age. Leaky faucets, flickering lights, cracks in the ceiling that nobody bothered to fix. I got friendly with the staff. Not hard when you actually treat people like human beings instead of servants. There was Linda, the head nurse, who worked double shifts to pay for her daughter's college. Marcus, the maintenance guy, who knew every inch of this building because he'd worked here for 15 years. Patricia, who handled administration and billing and looked stressed every single day. One afternoon, about 2 weeks into my stay, I asked Patricia a simple question while she was checking my blood pressure. "Who owns this place, anyway?" She sighed. "Some investment group. They bought it about 8 years ago, raised the rates, cut the staff, and basically just collect checks while this place falls apart. We've been asking for basic repairs for months and they keep saying there's no budget." "What's the name of the investment group?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. I think it's something like Riverside Holdings." "Let me check." She pulled out her tablet and scrolled through some files. "Yeah, Riverside Holdings, LLC. Why do you ask?" I smiled. "Just curious. You know how it is when you get old. Like to know where your money's going." That night, I couldn't sleep again, but this time for a different reason. Riverside Holdings. I knew that name. Knew it because I'd created it 30 years ago as a subsidiary to hold real estate investments separate from my main manufacturing business. It was buried in paperwork, hidden in the complicated corporate structure that most people, even lawyers, would need weeks to untangle. I'd bought Sunset Hills in 2016 as an investment property. Paid cash, $3.2 million. The previous owners were retiring, and I saw potential in the aging population boom. Installed a management company to run it, collected the profits, and honestly forgot about it because I had bigger concerns with Thompson Industries. David had no idea. Why would he? He'd never paid attention to the real estate portfolio. Never cared about anything except the main company and the big executive salary that came with it. He'd done exactly what I expected, grabbed the obvious prize and missed everything else. I started making phone calls. The nursing home let residents have cell phones, and David had been too arrogant to take mine. First call was to my old friend James, a lawyer who'd been with me since the beginning. Semi-retired now, but sharp as ever. "Richard. Good God, man, I heard you were in a home. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, James. Better than fine, actually. But I need your help, and I need you to keep this quiet." I explained the situation. All of it. David's scheme, the conservatorship, everything. James was silent for a long moment. "That son of a bitch," he finally said. "What do you need?" "First, I need you to verify that David hasn't touched Riverside Holdings or any of the other subsidiaries. Second, I need you to find out exactly what he's doing with Thompson Industries. Third, I need you to file a challenge to this conservatorship. I'll take the cognitive tests, whatever they need. I'm not incompetent, and we both know it. Consider it done." "But Richard, this is going to take time. Conservatorship cases can drag on for months." "I've got time, James. And while we're waiting, I've got other plans." Over the next few weeks, I worked on 2 fronts. James filed the legal challenges, requesting independent medical evaluations and questioning the validity of Dr. Patterson's assessment. Turns out Dr. Patterson had done 3 other evaluations for David over the past year, all conveniently finding cognitive issues in elderly patients whose families wanted control of their assets. That pattern would be useful in court. Meanwhile, I started learning everything about Sunset Hills' current operation. Marcus, the maintenance guy, became my best source of information. Told him I used to run a business and was bored out of my mind, asked if I could look at the maintenance logs just to keep my brain active. He was happy to share. The building was worse than I thought. Electrical system was outdated and dangerous. Plumbing was failing in multiple areas. The roof needed replacement within the next 2 years, or we'd have serious water damage. The management company David's people had hired was pocketing money meant for repairs and doing the bare minimum to pass inspections. But the staff were incredible. Linda the nurse often bought supplies out of her own pocket when the budget didn't cover what residents needed. Marcus fixed things on his own time with his own tools. The whole team cared about the residents more than the people supposedly running the place. I called James again. I need you to set up a meeting. Confidential. With the entire Sunset Hills staff. Management doesn't need to know. Richard, what are you planning? I'm planning to remind my son that you don't get to the top of the business world without learning how to fight dirty when you need to. The meeting happened on a Tuesday evening in the Sunset Hills cafeteria after visiting hours. Every staff member was there, about 20 people total, all looking confused about why some random old resident had called them together. I stood up at the front of the room, James beside me with a briefcase full of documents. Thank you all for coming. My name is Richard Thompson, and I need to tell you something that's going to sound crazy. I own this building. You could hear a pin drop. Patricia looked like she might faint. 8 years ago, I bought Sunset Hills as an investment property through a company called Riverside Holdings. That company is a subsidiary of my main corporation, Thompson Industries. The management company you've been dealing with, the one that ignores your repair requests and cuts your budgets, they work for people who stole my company while I was grieving my wife. My son, specifically. I let that sink in for a moment. Now, I'm in the process of getting control back. It's going to take a few months, but it's going to happen. And when it does, I'm making changes. Real changes. But I need your help. Linda raised her hand. What kind of changes? For starters, everyone in this room gets a 20% raise, retroactive to today. The repairs that have been ignored for months? We start tomorrow. New equipment, proper staffing levels, everything this place needs to be what it should be. But more than that, I'm going to turn Sunset Hills into a model facility. The kind of place where staff want to work and families trust to care for their loved ones. Marcus stood up. Why should we believe you? No offense, but you're a resident here. How do we know this isn't just, confusion or something? James stepped forward and opened his briefcase. Because I have the ownership documents right here. Richard Thompson owns Sunset Hills through Riverside Holdings LLC, which he established in 1994. The current management company, Prestige Care Solutions, was installed by David Thompson 6 months ago after he gained control of Thompson Industries. Everything Richard is telling you is documented and verified. I looked around the room at faces moving from skepticism to hope to excitement. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal or unethical. I'm asking you to keep doing your jobs, keep caring for the residents, and keep detailed records of everything. Every repair request denied, every budget cut, every corner the management company forces you to cut. Document it all. Because when I take my company back, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what my son did, and I'm going to make sure it never happens to anyone else. Patricia was crying. Do you mean it? About the raises? I mean every word. James, show them the contracts. We'd prepared employment contracts for every staff member, guaranteed for 2 years, with the raises and benefits I'd promised. Everyone who signed that night became part of something bigger than just a job. They became part of my plan to show David that you don't throw away the person who taught you everything you know. Over the next month, things started changing. James got me a new cognitive evaluation from an independent doctor who confirmed what I already knew. I was sharp as I'd ever been. The conservatorship started looking shakier in court. David's lawyer kept trying to delay, which just made the judge more suspicious. But David made a mistake. A big one. He started selling off pieces of Thompson Industries. Divisions I'd built, contracts I'd negotiated, relationships I'd maintained for decades. He was stripping the company for parts, taking quick profits instead of thinking long-term. Classic short-sighted greed. And he came to Sunset Hills to tell me about it. Walked into my room one afternoon with that same smug expression he'd worn the day he dumped me here. Just wanted to update you, Dad. Sold the Patterson division today. Got a great price, 20 million over market value. See? I'm taking care of things just fine. The Patterson division was the heart of our defense contracts. Steady income, incredible margins, and relationships with military procurement that took me 15 years to build. He'd sold it for a quick cash injection. I looked at him, this stranger wearing my son's face, and smiled. That's wonderful, David. I'm so proud of you. He looked confused. Probably expected me to be angry or upset. Really? Really? You're doing exactly what I thought you'd do. And that's perfect. He left looking unsettled, and I allowed myself a real smile for the first time in months. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for him to step into it. Because what David didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that I'd built fail-safes into Thompson Industries decades ago. Provisions that kicked in if more than 30% of company assets were sold within a single fiscal year. Provisions that automatically triggered a board review and vote. And the board? Half of them were people I'd personally hired, people who'd been with me for 20 or 30 years, people who knew exactly what kind of man David really was. James called me that night. The board just scheduled an emergency meeting for next week. David's going to walk into a room full of people who are very, very unhappy with his decisions. Good, I said. Make sure you're there. And make sure the conservatorship hearing is scheduled for the day after. It already is. Richard, this is all coming together beautifully. It's not about beauty, James. It's about justice. My son needs to learn that actions have consequences, and I'm going to be the one to teach him that lesson. I hung up and looked around my small room at Sunset Hills. The room my son had put me in. The room in the building I owned. And I started laughing, really laughing, for the first time since Margaret died. David thought he'd won. Thought he'd outsmarted the old man. But he'd forgotten the most important lesson I'd ever tried to teach him. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. The board meeting was exactly what I hoped it would be. James recorded the whole thing and played it for me later. David walked in expecting a routine update and walked into an ambush. The board members tore into him for selling the Patterson division, for the other short-sighted decisions he'd made, for running Thompson Industries like his personal piggy bank instead of the legacy company it was supposed to be. They voted, unanimously, to suspend his authority pending a full investigation into his management decisions. David was still technically CEO, but he couldn't make any major moves without board approval. He was neutered. And the next day, I walked into court for my conservatorship hearing. Before we get to what happened in that courtroom, I need you to do something for me. If you're hooked on this story, if you want to see David get what's coming to him, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below telling me what you think is going to happen next. I read every single one. And smash that like button because it helps this channel grow and bring you more stories like this. Trust me, what happens next is going to blow your mind. Now let's get back to it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Just me, David, our lawyers, the judge, and a court reporter. David sat across from me looking annoyed, like this was just a waste of his time. Like he'd already won and this was just a formality. Judge Morrison was a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes that didn't miss anything. She'd reviewed all the documents, all the medical evaluations, all the evidence from both sides. Now she was looking at me like she was trying to figure out if I was a confused old man or if something else was going on. Mr. Thompson, she said, I've reviewed Dr. Patterson's initial evaluation from 6 months ago. I've also reviewed the independent evaluation conducted by Dr. Sarah Chen 3 weeks ago. The results are significantly different. Can you explain that? I leaned forward. Your Honor, 6 months ago I just lost my wife of 52 years. I was grieving, I was depressed, and yes, I was distracted. Dr. Patterson asked me some basic questions during what was supposed to be a routine checkup, and I didn't take it seriously because I didn't know my son was building a case to have me declared incompetent. Dr. Chen's evaluation was comprehensive, thorough, and conducted when I was actually paying attention. The results speak for themselves. Judge Morrison nodded and looked at David. Mr. Thompson, the younger, your father seems quite articulate and aware. Can you explain why you felt conservatorship was necessary? David put on his concerned son act. Your Honor, my father has good days and bad days. Today might be a good day, but I've witnessed significant cognitive decline. He forgets appointments, gets confused about basic business matters, and I was genuinely concerned for his safety." "That's interesting," James said, standing up. "Because we have testimony from every staff member at Sunset Hills stating that Richard Thompson is one of the most mentally acute residents in the facility. We have records of him participating in complex discussions, helping other residents with their affairs, and demonstrating clear, consistent cognitive function over the past 3 months." The judge looked at the documents James handed her. "I see. And Mr. Thompson, elder, can you tell me what you did last Tuesday?" "I didn't hesitate. Tuesday I woke up at 6:30, had breakfast in the cafeteria at 7. Scrambled eggs and wheat toast. Spoke with Linda, the head nurse, about a medication schedule for another resident who was having trouble remembering his doses. At 9 I met with Marcus, the maintenance supervisor, to review repair priorities for the building's electrical system. At 11 I had physical therapy with Janet. At 1 I had lunch with Frank, Robert, and Maria. We talked about Frank's teaching career and Robert told us about his time in Vietnam. At 3 James called me to discuss the board meeting. At 5:30 I had dinner, meatloaf and mashed potatoes. At 7 I watched the news. At 9 I went to bed. Would you like me to continue with other days?" Judge Morrison almost smiled. "That won't be necessary. Mr. Thompson, younger, when was the last time you visited your father at Sunset Hills?" David shifted uncomfortably. "I've been very busy with the company, Your Honor. Running a $100 million business doesn't leave much time for—" "Answer the question, please." "About 3 months ago." "3 months," the judge repeated. "And yet you're arguing that you've witnessed ongoing cognitive decline that necessitates continued conservatorship?" David's lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, my client has received reports from the facility staff about—" "Actually," James interrupted, "we have sworn statements from the facility staff stating that they've provided no such reports to David Thompson. In fact, several staff members state that they've attempted to contact him about facility matters and received no response." I watched David's face turn red. He wasn't used to being challenged, wasn't used to people calling out his lies. His whole life I'd protected him from consequences, smoothed over his mistakes, bailed him out of problems. Not anymore. Judge Morrison spent another 20 minutes asking questions, reviewing documents, and watching David dig himself deeper with every answer. Finally, she set down her pen and looked at both of us. "I'm going to be very direct. This conservatorship appears to have been established under questionable circumstances, potentially for financial gain rather than genuine concern for Mr. Thompson's welfare. The current medical evidence shows no cognitive impairment that would justify continued restrictions on his rights. Therefore, I'm dissolving the conservatorship effective immediately. Mr. Richard Thompson, you are restored to full legal capacity. All assets and authorities are to be returned to you within 72 hours. David stood up so fast his chair almost fell over. "Your Honor, you can't." "I can and I have. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into Dr. Patterson's evaluation practices. If this court finds evidence of fraud or elder abuse, criminal charges may follow. We're adjourned." I walked out of that courtroom a free man. Well, free in the legal sense. Still had to go back to Sunset Hills because I actually liked it there now. The staff had become family, and I had work to do. David caught up with me in the parking lot. His lawyer had already disappeared, probably trying to distance himself from the sinking ship. "Dad, wait. We can work this out. I was just trying to help. I was trying to protect the company." I turned and looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the panic in his eyes, the desperation. He knew what was coming. Protect the company. You sold the Patterson division. You fired 3 department heads who'd been with me for 20 years and replaced them with your college buddies. You cut research and development by 40%. You took out loans against company assets to pay yourself bonuses. You didn't protect anything, David. You looted it. I can fix it. Give me a chance to fix it. No. You had your chance. You had your whole life to learn how to do this right, and you chose to learn nothing. Now you're going to face the consequences. I got in James's car and we drove away. Left David standing in that parking lot looking lost. Part of me, the part that was still his father, felt sorry for him. But the bigger part, the part that built an empire from nothing, knew that mercy now would just enable more damage later. Back at Sunset Hills, the staff was waiting. News travels fast in a place like that. Linda had tears in her eyes when I walked in. "You did it. You really did it." "We did it," I corrected her. "Couldn't have done it without all of you documenting everything, supporting the case, being honest about what you'd observed. This was a team effort." That night I called an emergency board meeting for Thompson Industries. I was back in control, which meant I could do that now. Every board member showed up, even the ones who'd been David's allies. They all knew which way the wind was blowing. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. David is out as CEO effective immediately. I'm resuming control until we can find a proper replacement. Our first priority is damage control. We need to assess what he sold, what can be recovered, and what's permanently lost. Second priority is restoring relationships with clients and partners who've been burned by his short-term thinking. Third priority is rebuilding the divisions he gutted. One of the board members, Tom Chen, raised his hand. "Richard, no disrespect, but are you sure you want to take this on at your age? Running Thompson Industries is a full-time job." "Tom, I built this company. I know every department, every process, every relationship. I can run it in my sleep. But you're right that I don't want to do this forever. We've got 6 months to stabilize things, then we're hiring a real CEO. Someone who actually knows what they're doing." Another board member spoke up. "What about David? What's he going to do?" "David is going to learn what it's like to have nothing. I'm removing him from all company positions, revoking his access to company accounts, and offering him the same severance package he gave to the people he fired, 2 weeks' pay. He can figure out the rest on his own." The room was silent. These were people who'd known David his whole life, watched him grow up. But they'd also watched him nearly destroy everything we'd built. "Sometimes," I said, "the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them fail. Let them hit bottom. Let them learn that actions have consequences. I should have done this 20 years ago. Maybe if I had, he'd be a different person today." We voted. David was out. Unanimous decision. Over the next few weeks, I worked 16-hour days again. From my room at Sunset Hills, because I still wasn't ready to leave. I used my laptop to review reports, my phone to call clients, the conference room to hold video meetings. The staff thought I was crazy, but they also saw that I was doing what I'd always done: building, fixing, creating. Thompson Industries started stabilizing. We couldn't get the Patterson division back, but we rebuilt relationships with the military contacts. The research and development teams started getting proper funding again. The department heads David had fired came back after I called them personally and apologized for what my son had done. And David called me 17 times in the first week. I didn't answer. He sent emails, texts, showed up at Sunset Hills demanding to see me. I had Marcus escort him out. He needed to sit with what he'd done. Needed to feel the consequences without me swooping in to save him. But the real moment, the moment I'd been planning for, came about 6 weeks after the court hearing. I called David and told him to meet me at Sunset Hills. In my room, 9 a.m. sharp. He showed up looking like hell. Lost weight, hadn't shaved, clothes wrinkled. The shine was gone. "Good. Sit down," I said. He sat. "Do you know why you're here? To gloat? To rub it in? No. You're here because I want you to understand something. When you put me in this place, when you took my company, when you had me declared incompetent, you thought you were being smart. Thought you were taking what you deserved. But you made 3 critical mistakes." I held up one finger. "First, you underestimated me. Thought because I was old and grieving that I was weak. You forgot that I built everything you tried to take. Forgot that I know every trick, every strategy, every move because I invented most of them. Second finger. You never bothered to really learn the business. You wanted the title, the money, the power, but you didn't want to do the work. So when you got control, you had no idea what you actually had. You sold the Patterson division because you saw $20 million. You didn't see the long-term contracts, the relationships, the strategic value. You thought small. Third finger. And worst of all, you forgot that I own things. Lots of things. Including this building. The building you dumped me in to get me out of the way. David's face went white. What? Sunset Hills. I own it. Have owned it for 8 years through Riverside Holdings. You never checked. Never bothered to look at the full corporate structure. Just grabbed Thompson Industries and thought you had everything. I pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, lots of documents. This is the deed to Sunset Hills. This is the ownership structure of Riverside Holdings. This is documentation showing that while you were busy running Thompson Industries into the ground, I was working with the staff here to document every building code violation, every safety issue, every corner your management company cut. And this, I pulled out the final document, is a lawsuit. Against you personally. For elder abuse, fraud, and mismanagement of company assets. David couldn't speak. Just stared at the papers like they were a death sentence. I could destroy you, I said quietly. I could take everything, leave you with nothing, make sure you never work in this industry again. And part of me wants to. The part that sat in this room for months, wondering how my own son could throw me away like garbage. I paused. Let him sit with that fear. But I'm not going to do that. You know why? Because your mother would be heartbroken. Because somewhere under all this greed and selfishness, there's still the boy I raised. The boy who used to help me in the garage, who used to ask a million questions about how things worked, who used to look at me like I was a hero. David's eyes were wet now. Good. Let him feel something real for once. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign this agreement. You give up all claims to Thompson Industries, all company stock, all severance beyond what I already offered. In exchange, I don't pursue the lawsuit. I don't press charges. I let you walk away and rebuild your life however you want. Dad, I'm not finished. You're also going to work. Real work. I've arranged a position for you at one of our competitor companies. Entry level. They don't know who you are, just that you have some business experience and need a fresh start. You're going to learn the industry from the ground up. You're going to do the work you should have done 20 years ago. And if you stick with it, if you actually learn and grow and become the man you should be, then maybe we can have a relationship again someday. I slid the papers across to him. Or you can refuse, and I'll see you in court. Your choice. David picked up the pen with shaking hands. He read through the agreement, and I could see him calculating, trying to find an angle, a way out. But there wasn't one. I'd covered everything. He signed. There's one more thing, I said as he stood to leave. I want you to work one shift here. At Sunset Hills. As a care assistant. I want you to see what this place is like from the inside. See the people you so casually threw me in with. See what it means to actually care for people instead of just using them. That's not in the agreement. No, it's not. It's a request. From your father. The man you betrayed. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his eyes. Maybe shame, maybe understanding, maybe both. Okay, he said quietly. When? Saturday. 7 a.m. Ask for Linda. She'll tell you what to do. He left, and I sat in my room feeling tired but satisfied. Not happy, exactly. You can't be happy when you've had to destroy your own son's life to teach him a lesson. But satisfied that justice had been done. Saturday morning I watched from my window as David showed up in jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual expensive suits. Watched Linda put him to work helping residents with breakfast, cleaning rooms, assisting with physical therapy. Watched him actually have to serve people instead of being served. He stayed the whole shift. 8 hours of real work. At the end, he came to my room looking exhausted. That was the hardest day I've had in years, he said. That's every day for these people. The staff who work here, the residents who live here. Every single day. And you tried to ignore it, cut their budgets, treat them like they didn't matter. He nodded. Didn't argue, didn't make excuses. Just nodded. I'm sorry, Dad. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. It was the first genuine thing he'd said to me in years. Sorry is a start, I said. Now go do the work." He left, and I didn't know if I'd hear from him again. Didn't know if he'd actually follow through or if he'd disappear and blame me for everything. That was up to him now. But I'd done what I needed to do. Taken back what was mine, protected the company I'd built, and given my son one last chance to become someone worth respecting. 3 months later, Thompson Industries was back on track. We'd hired a new CEO, a woman named Sarah Martinez who'd run a similar company and actually knew what she was doing. I stayed on the board but stepped back from day-to-day operations. Spent my time at Sunset Hills working with the staff to turn it into the model facility I'd promised. We renovated the whole building. New electrical, new plumbing, new roof. Hired more staff, raised wages, improved benefits. Created programs for residents, brought in better medical equipment, made the place somewhere people actually wanted to be instead of somewhere families dumped their elderly relatives. And I heard from David. Not often, but occasionally. Short emails updating me on his job, his progress, his life. He was actually doing it. Actually learning. Actually working. One day, about 6 months after everything went down, he showed up at Sunset Hills on a Saturday. Not for a shift, just to visit. We sat in the garden, the one we'd renovated with the settlement money from the management company lawsuit. "The company I work for just promoted me," he said. "Junior account manager. It's not much, but I earned it." "That's good," I said. "How does it feel?" "Different. Scary. But good. I'm actually learning things, Dad. Things you tried to teach me years ago that I was too arrogant to listen to." We sat in silence for a while, watching the other residents enjoy the garden. "Do you think Mom would be proud of me?" he asked. "Eventually, if I keep doing this." I thought about Margaret. About her kindness, her belief in second chances, her ability to see the best in people. "Yeah," I said. "Eventually. But you've got a long way to go." "I know." He stayed for an hour, then left to go back to his small apartment and his entry-level job and his new life. And I sat in that garden, in the building I owned, in the place my son had tried to bury me, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not for me. I'd lived my life, built my empire, won my battles. But hope for David. Hope that maybe, just maybe, losing everything would teach him what having everything never could. That people matter more than money. That respect is earned, not inherited. That the measure of a man isn't what he takes, but what he builds. The same lessons I'd learned 50 years ago in a garage with $200 and a dream. Listen, if this story is hitting you the way I think it is, I need you to do me a huge favor. Pause the video right now and subscribe to this channel. Seriously, do it. Because stories like this, real stories about justice, revenge, and second chances, they don't get told enough. And your subscription? That's what keeps this channel alive. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think David deserves a second chance, or should Richard have destroyed him completely? I want to know what you think. Hit that like button too, because we're about to get to the final part of this story, and trust me, you don't want to miss how this all ends. Let's finish this. A year passed. Then 2. Thompson Industries thrived under Sarah's leadership, and I stayed involved enough to make sure my legacy was protected, but not so much that I was micromanaging. Turns out, when you hire competent people and let them do their jobs, things work pretty well. Sunset Hills became something I was genuinely proud of. We won awards for quality of care, staff retention, resident satisfaction. Other nursing homes started reaching out asking how we did it, and I was happy to tell them, pay your people well, maintain your facilities, and actually give a damn about the human beings in your care. Revolutionary concept, apparently. David kept working, kept climbing. 3 years after I'd forced him to start over, he was a senior account manager at his company. Making decent money, nothing like what he'd had before, but earning it honestly. He visited once a month, sometimes twice. We didn't talk about the past much. Mostly talked about his work, about what he was learning, about the industry. But one Saturday he showed up looking nervous. Had that expression people get when they need to ask for something important. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." We went to my room. I'd upgraded it over the years. Bigger space, better furniture, my own bathroom. Perks of owning the place. "What's on your mind?" He took a deep breath. The company I work for is expanding. They're looking for someone to head up a new division focused on sustainable manufacturing. It's exactly the kind of thing we used to do at Thompson Industries before I screwed it all up. They want me to apply for the position. So apply. That's not the issue. If I get it, I'd be running a division that would compete directly with Thompson Industries in some markets. I wanted to ask your permission first. I don't want you to think I'm trying to undermine what you built or go behind your back. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement was gone. In their place was something I hadn't seen in decades: humility, consideration for others, actual integrity. David, you don't need my permission. You're your own man now. You've earned that. But since you asked, here's what I think. Competition is good. It makes everyone better. If you can run that division well, if you can build something real and sustainable, then you should do it. And if Thompson Industries can't compete with you, then maybe we don't deserve to win. He smiled, a real genuine smile. Mom used to say that. That competition makes you sharper. Your mother was a smart woman. Smarter than me in a lot of ways. She would have handled all of this better than I did. I don't know about that. You did what needed to be done. I was out of control, Dad. I was on a path to destroying everything and hurting a lot of people. You stopped me. Yeah, it was brutal, but I needed brutal. I needed to lose everything to understand what anything was worth. We sat there for a while, father and son, in a room that had once been a prison but had become something else entirely. A home. A headquarters. A place where broken things got fixed. Did you get the job? I asked a month later when David visited again. Yeah. Start next Monday. I'm terrified. Good. Terror means you care. Means you understand the responsibility. The day you stop being scared is the day you get complacent. Dad, I want to ask you something else. And you can say no, I'll understand completely. But I'm getting married. That caught me off guard. Married? To who? Her name is Rachel. She's a project manager at my company. We've been dating for about 8 months. She knows everything, Dad. Everything I did, everything that happened. I didn't want to start a relationship on lies, so I told her all of it. And she still wanted to be with me. She sounds smart. She is. Way smarter than me. Keeps me grounded. Calls me out when I start slipping into old patterns. I want you to meet her. And I want you at the wedding. If you're willing. I thought about Margaret. About how much she would have wanted this. How much she would have loved seeing David find someone who made him better. I'd be honored. The wedding was small. Just close friends and family. Rachel's parents, her sister, a few work colleagues. David introduced me to everyone as his father, the man who built Thompson Industries. Said it with pride instead of resentment. That meant more to me than he probably knew. Rachel came up to me during the reception. She was in her early 30s, sharp eyes, confident handshake. Reminded me a little of Margaret, actually. Mr. Thompson, I wanted to thank you. For what? For not giving up on David. He told me everything you did. How you took your company back, how you forced him to start over. A lot of fathers would have just cut their son off completely and walked away. But you gave him a path back. That takes love. Takes stubbornness, mostly. I'm a stubborn old man. She laughed. David says the same thing. But I see it differently. You saw who he could be, and you refused to let him be anything less. That's not stubbornness. That's faith. I watched David across the room, talking and laughing with his new wife's family. Looking happy. Looking like someone I could be proud of. He's got a long way to go still, I said. But yeah, I have faith he'll get there. 4 years after the courtroom, 4 years after I took back my life and my company, I got a call from Sarah at Thompson Industries. Richard, we have a situation. The Patterson division is for sale again. The company that bought it from David is going bankrupt. We could potentially buy it back at a significant discount. How significant? They paid $20 million. We could probably get it for 12. Maybe less if we negotiate hard. I thought about it. The Patterson division had been the heart of our defense contracts. Getting it back would restore relationships we'd lost, bring back steady revenue, strengthen the company strategically. Make the offer. But Sarah, I want David involved in the negotiations. David? Your son David? Yeah. He runs a competing division now, but he knows the defense industry. He knows the Patterson division better than anyone except me because he grew up around it. And I think he deserves a chance to help fix what he broke. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Are you sure about this, Richard? No. But I'm doing it anyway. Call him. The negotiations took 3 weeks. David worked with Sarah and the Thompson Industries team, using everything he'd learned at his new company combined with his old knowledge of how we used to operate. He was good at it. Really good. Turned out, when he actually applied himself and worked with a team instead of trying to dominate everyone, he had skills. We got the Patterson division back for $10 million, saved the company money, and restored a critical piece of our operations. David came to see me after the deal closed. Thank you for that opportunity, Dad. It meant a lot. You earned it. You did good work. I've been thinking about something. My company, they're happy with what I'm doing. But Thompson Industries, that was supposed to be my legacy too. I threw it away, but maybe, someday, if I keep proving myself, if I keep doing the work. He trailed off. I knew what he was asking without him saying it. David, Thompson Industries will always be part of your history. But it's not your future. Not in the way you're thinking. Sarah is doing an excellent job. The company doesn't need you to run it. It needs you to be competition, to push us to be better, to succeed on your own merits instead of riding on what I built. I could see the disappointment in his face, but also understanding. Acceptance. But, I continued, when I die, you'll inherit my shares. What you do with them then is up to you. Sell them, keep them as investments, work with the board, whatever you think is right. But you'll make that decision as someone who earned his way back, not as someone who stole what he didn't deserve. When you die, Dad, you're going to outlive all of us. You're too stubborn to die. I laughed. Maybe. But when it happens, whenever it happens, you'll be ready. That's what matters. 5 years. 5 years from the day David put me in Sunset Hills to the day I decided to throw a party. Not for me. For the staff. For the residents. For everyone who'd made Sunset Hills into something special. We rented out the entire garden, brought in caterers, hired a band. Invited families of residents, former employees, people from the community. It was a celebration of what we'd built together. David came with Rachel and their 1-year-old daughter, Margaret. Named after her grandmother. I held my granddaughter and felt something I didn't think I'd feel again. Complete happiness. Linda came up to me during the party, glass of wine in hand, looking happy and relaxed for the first time in the 5 years I'd known her. Richard, I just want you to know that working here, building this with you, it's been the best job I've ever had. You changed a lot of lives. Not just the residents, but all of us. You changed mine too, Linda. All of you did. When David put me here, I thought my life was over. Turned out it was just beginning a new chapter. Marcus joined us. Remember that first night when you told us you owned the building? We thought you were crazy. I am crazy. Crazy enough to think an old man could take on his son and win. Crazy enough to think a nursing home could be more than just a place people go to die. Crazy enough to believe that sometimes the end of one thing is just the start of something better. The party went late into the evening. I watched David play with his daughter, watched Rachel laugh with the other guests, watched the staff relax and enjoy themselves. Watched Frank recite Shakespeare to anyone who would listen, watched Maria dance with her visiting grandchildren, watched Robert tell his war stories one more time to a new audience. And I thought about Margaret. About how she always believed people could change, could grow, could become better versions of themselves if given the chance and the right motivation. She'd been right. About David. About me. About everything. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my room at Sunset Hills and looked at the photos on my wall. Margaret and me on our wedding day. David as a baby. The original garage where Thompson Industries started. The team photo from our first major contract. And new photos too. David's wedding. Little Margaret's birth. The Sunset Hills staff at our award ceremony. The renovated building. A whole life, displayed on a wall. The successes and the failures. The triumphs and the betrayals. The endings and the new beginnings. My phone rang. It was James. "Richard, I just heard from the state medical board. Dr. Patterson lost his license. They found evidence he'd been filing fraudulent evaluations for families trying to gain conservatorship. 6 other cases besides yours. He's facing criminal charges." "Good. Maybe it'll stop someone else from going through what I did. You know, when this all started, when David first moved against you, I thought you were finished. Thought there was no way you could fight back from a nursing home bed. I'm glad I was wrong. James, I was never fighting from a nursing home bed. I was fighting from a building I owned, surrounded by people who gave a damn, with a lifetime of experience and a burning need to prove that you don't throw away someone who built everything you have. David made one critical mistake." "What's that?" "He thought age made me weak. But age just made me smarter. More patient. More willing to play the long game. Young people want quick wins. Old people, we understand that the best victories take time." I hung up and looked out my window at Sunset Hills. My building. My investment. My accidental home. The place where I'd lost everything and gained it all back. David called the next morning. "Dad, Rachel and I were talking. We want little Margaret to spend time with you. Regular visits, not just holidays. We want her to know her grandfather. We want her to hear the stories about how you built Thompson Industries, about how you never gave up, about all of it. Even the part where I destroyed her father's life. Especially that part. She needs to know that actions have consequences. That you can't just take what you want without earning it. That sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who hold you accountable. Those are important lessons." I felt something catch in my throat. "Your mother would be so proud of you right now." "I hope so. I'm trying, Dad. Every day I'm trying to be the man she thought I could be. The man you tried to raise me to be before I went off the rails. You're getting there, son. You're getting there." We made plans for Margaret's next visit. Made plans for dinner the following week. Made plans for the future, something I hadn't thought I'd be able to do with my son ever again. That night I had dinner with Frank, Robert, and Maria like I did most nights. We talked about the news, about our families, about our lives. Normal conversation, the kind you have with friends. "Richard," Frank said, "you ever regret it? Staying here instead of moving back to your old house after you got control back?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. No. This place, these people, this is where I fought my last battle and won. This is where I proved that being old doesn't mean being powerless. This is where I rebuilt my relationship with my son. Why would I leave? Maria smiled. "Plus the food's pretty good since you hired that new chef." "That too," I laughed. Robert raised his glass of water. "To Richard. The only guy I know who got thrown in a nursing home and somehow ended up owning the place." We toasted. We laughed. We told stories. We lived. Because that's what I'd learned through all of this. The conservatorship, the betrayal, the fight to take back my life. I'd learned that living isn't about the money you make or the company you build or the empire you leave behind. Living is about the people you help. The stands you take. The principles you refuse to compromise. The second chances you give, even when they're not deserved. The hope you maintain, even when everything looks hopeless. David tried to bury me in Sunset Hills. Tried to take everything I'd built and claim it as his own. But he forgot the most important thing I'd ever learned in 50 years of business. You can take someone's money. You can take their company. You can even take their freedom. But you can't take who they are. You can't take their knowledge, their determination, their will to fight back. And you definitely can't take those things from someone who started with nothing and built everything. I owned the building he threw me in. But more than that, I owned my life, my choices, my future. And in the end, that's all that really matters. 6 months later, I was sitting in that same room when Sarah called. "Richard, the board wants to do something special for the company's 50th anniversary next year. We were thinking about a documentary, interviews with you, the early employees, clients, everyone who built Thompson Industries. Would you be interested? Only if David gets to participate. He's part of the story too. The good parts and the bad parts. We were hoping you'd say that. Richard, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Do you forgive him for what he did?" I thought about that question. Really thought about it. Forgiveness isn't a moment, Sarah. It's a process. Every time David shows up and does the right thing, every time he chooses humility over pride, every time he puts in the work instead of looking for shortcuts, I forgive him a little more. Ask me again in 10 years and maybe I'll have a complete answer. That's fair. And Richard, for what it's worth, what you did, taking him down and then giving him a path back up, that took more strength than just destroying him would have. A lot of people couldn't have done both. A lot of people didn't have Margaret whispering in their ear about second chances and redemption. I'm just trying to honor her memory the best way I know how. The documentary came out the following year. It was honest, brutally honest. Showed the highs and the lows, the success and the betrayal. My interview. David's interview. Employees talking about the glory days and the dark period when David nearly destroyed everything. But it also showed the recovery, the rebuilding, the lessons learned. David talked openly about his mistakes, about what he'd learned, about how losing everything had been the best thing that ever happened to him. The documentary ended with footage of our 50th anniversary party. Me giving a speech about the future of Thompson Industries. David in the audience with his family, applauding. Sarah on stage accepting an award for the company's turnaround. The whole team celebrating together. And then, in the final shot, me walking back into Sunset Hills. Going home. Because that's what it had become. I'm 85 now. Still living at Sunset Hills, still working with the staff to improve the place, still meeting with the Thompson Industries board once a month. Still having dinner with Frank, Robert, and Maria, though we've lost a few friends along the way and made new ones. David runs his division successfully. Competes with Thompson Industries in some markets, collaborates in others. We have lunch every other week. Little Margaret is 6 now, smart as a whip, asks a million questions about everything. Reminds me of her father before he got lost in greed and ambition. Sometimes I think about that day in the courtroom. The day I got my life back. The day everything changed. And I realized something. David didn't put me in Sunset Hills to steal my company. He put me in Sunset Hills so I could remember what actually mattered. So I could build something more important than a business empire. So I could create a legacy that wasn't measured in dollars but in lives changed. He didn't know I owned the building. But in a weird way, I'm glad I did. Because it gave me the leverage I needed to fight back, to teach him the lessons he needed to learn, and to create something good out of something that started as betrayal. Thompson Industries will outlive me. It's in good hands with Sarah and the team. My shares will go to David eventually, and I trust him to do the right thing with them. But Sunset Hills? That's my real legacy. A place where people are treated with dignity. Where staff are valued. Where the end of life doesn't mean the end of living. My son tried to bury me here. Instead, I planted roots and grew something beautiful. And that's the best revenge of all, turning his worst act into my greatest achievement. So that's the story. A son's betrayal. A father's revenge. And ultimately, a family's redemption. But here's the thing, I don't just tell these stories to entertain you. I tell them because they're real, because they matter, because somewhere out there, someone is going through something similar and needs to know they can fight back. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that you're never too old or too powerless to stand up for yourself, then I need you to do something for me right now. Subscribe to this channel. Not for me, but for yourself, because you deserve more stories like this. Stories that show you the truth about human nature, about family, about the choices we make and the consequences we face. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. Have you ever been betrayed by family? Have you ever had to fight back against impossible odds? Have you ever forgiven someone who didn't deserve it? Share your experience because your story matters too, And this community is built on real people sharing real truths. And hit that like button, because every like tells YouTube that stories like this, honest stories without filters or fairy tale endings, these are the stories people want to hear. I've got dozens more stories to tell. Stories about revenge, justice, karma, and redemption. Stories that will make you angry, make you cheer, make you think about your own life and your own choices. But I can only keep telling them if you're here to listen. So subscribe, comment, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because in a world full of fake stories and manufactured drama, real stories, the ones that actually happened, those are the ones worth telling. Thanks for watching. And remember, you're never too old, never too weak, never too powerless to fight for what's yours. Sometimes you just need to be patient enough to play the long game. See you in the next one.